Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 76 of 2019. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can tweet us at The Odds Breakers. Tweet me at OBKiev. Follow us on social media /The Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by MyBookie.ag. For a 50% sign-up bonus, please visit MyBookie and use the promo code The Odds Breakers. Terms and conditions apply. If you'd like to help us out with our costs for the website and the podcast, we would love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com. Click shop. Become a member. For $17.99 a month, you can become a premium member, get my plays and premium plays before the line moves. For $2 more, you can have all that and become a patron subscriber and also get the podcast a little early. If nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. It is college football bowl week. Well, bowl weeks, and they all start this weekend. Coming up, we have Kyle Hunter coming on to break down some of these games and a few big hoops games coming up this weekend with names like Kentucky, Villanova, Kansas, and Ohio State. So, real excited about this podcast. Our agenda, we're going to get probably every single game talked about. Obviously, premium plays will say nothing or just leans, but we give out a ton of plays. We're going to have a write-up on every single game here at the Odds Breakers, so no worries about that. We're going to talk about some games, already discussed some with Marco D'Angelo last week, and we're going to probably have one podcast next week because it's Christmas week, and hopefully it's going to drop on the 23rd, possibly the 24th, but I'd like to drop it a little bit earlier if we have time. So that's the agenda. Most likely there could be only one podcast the following week, being New Year's is also right in the middle of the week as well. But everything should be covered by then, and we're absolutely looking forward to a great holiday season. It was a great college football season for us as well, being season win totals at 7-3-1. That was fantastic. We pushed on the West Virginia one, only lost on the Boise State under 10, the Florida International over 7.5, and there was one other one I'm trying to remember, but we won on a ton of them. Oh, it was Penn State. We lost the Penn State play. The games that we won, the ones that we won, there's a lot of plus money. Over 4 wins for Kent State was plus 160. Over 8 wins for San Diego State was plus 120. So was real happy about that. Under 7.5 for Purdue cashed. You know, there's just a lot of them that we played, and it was fantastic. 7-3-1. Last year, of course, was way better at 11-1-1. Probably won't ever do that again. But college season win totals have been cashing, and we start giving those out literally in May, June, July, and just one of these bets pays for the Odds Breakers membership for quite a few months, depending on how big of a bettor you are. So, you know, hopefully you benefit by doing that next summer. I start early. Get right into college football literally in April, May, June, and it's important to me. And the summer, I do light baseball handicapping. It's more of an off season, so we have just that much more time prepping. So really happy about that. All right, well, we have a huge podcast for you, so let's get Kyle Hunter picks right on to discuss some college football. All right, now I'm happy to welcome back a grade A and beloved guest, top handicapper you know as Mr. Kyle Hunter. You can follow him on Twitter at Kyle Hunter Picks. Check out his plays at huntersportspicks.com as well as bettersportspicks.com. Bowl season is upon us, Kyle. I tell you, if your extended family's getting you down, there's no better distraction to have than throwing on some football in the old living room, man, for holiday season. And there's probably a lot of people that got to deal with some extended family and usually some you might not want to talk to as much. So, people love this time of year. They love the distraction. What's new with you, Kyle?
Well, a lot of stuff going on. This is a really busy time of the year, obviously. Bowl season. I'm putting out, my work for free at bettersportsfix.com with some free analysis. Putting together the conference ATS records, which I know we're going to talk about here some. And then I'm going to give some systems that have done well in bowl season and also give some leans there at bettersportsfix.com just for free. Just sign up and register for free there for the members area at bettersportsfix.com. But, honestly, there's so many sports going on right now that this is just so much overlap, lower amount of sleep this time of the year for me. For sure. Just kind of having a little bit more caffeine than I normally would probably. But, I will tell you that, on one hand, I'm happy that college football is ending because it allows me to put some time more into the other sports. But at the same time, I really love bowl season. And every year at the end of bowl season, I'm like, man, I hate that it's over. So, you're kind of torn on that. It's just things are so busy that it's okay that something would drop off, but at the same time, I really love college football bowl season.
Yeah, you love it, and then it's kind of like bittersweet, like you're saying.
Right.
It's like you put such a grind into college football, and then basketball's kind of new and exciting. You feel like the new opportunity comes in, right? And then by March Madness, you start getting burned out as well. So that's just the way it is. And then all of a sudden, June comes, you're like, I can't wait for football. Come on, that happens to all of us, and totally agree with you there. So, tell us a little bit about the new venture, bettersportspicks.com. It looks like more of an a la carte feel, maybe a little bit more specific to some things. Can you share with our audience a little bit about that website?
Yeah, I've had a lot of people ask me over the last few years if I could sell things just totals only, sides only. Totals I've done really well in over the long term. And I think everybody who's listened to me on here and on all the other shows and just following me on Twitter knows that my real passion here is totals, and that's where I've done the best. People want to buy only totals or people want to buy only sides. Some people don't like betting totals, and that's fine. But whatever it is you like to do, on bettersportsfix.com, you can buy just what you want. You don't have to get every single play. So I would encourage you to check that out at bettersportsfix.com. The other thing I'm going to do with that website is I'm going to have a lot of free information. There will be a lot of free content available. Right now, like I said, I already have the bowl ATS records by conference article up, and there's going to be lots more bowl articles coming up here in the next couple weeks, and those are going to be up for free. The other thing that I will say is that I'm going to have some free contests for cash or free picks there at bettersportsfix.com, so be on the lookout for that. I actually have one planned for the bowl games coming up this weekend to throw out a little bit of cash for free. And like I said, it's going to take you 5 seconds to put your guess in, and maybe you win something. If not, it didn't really cost you anything. So head over to bettersportsfix.com, where I'm going to be putting out a lot of free information there coming up.
Fantastic. That's great. Sometimes people just like a piece of things instead of the full shebang. So I love that. That's great that you're doing that venture, man. Well, going back to that website, you had an article there talking about how each conference did over the past 3 years against the spread. And I can't wait to hear more about that.
Yeah, let's start out with I'm going to start out with the bad. I have to say the Pac-12 first. 5-17 ATS. Everybody knows the Pac-12 has been really bad, and you do wonder if, at what point is there going to not be any value on this anymore, because everybody knows it. But I will say 2-10 ATS as a favorite is the Pac-12 during that period. I couldn't bet the Pac-12 as a favorite unless I really loved it. I mean, there's even been a couple of the games where I have a slight lean on the Pac-12. Specifically that Cal game. You look at Cal and you say, man, I really want to go against Illinois. That's it. But do I really want to lay points for the Pac-12 team? I really don't. I think I'll pass on that game, honestly. But
especially with a Cal team. I mean, they're not known for his scoring juggernauts. I know Chase Garber's back, but the funny thing about the stats of Illinois is if you take out that first half of their season, it's a lot better. So, so that's something that kept me away from Cal, but I did look at that too.
Yeah, and basically, you have to be at least a little bit scared if you're laying points for the Pac-12, because I don't feel like you need to be a hero and just try to call the bottom. It's like kind of like when you get in the stock market and it's just a falling knife, and all at once, you try to catch it. Let's see how the Pac-12 does here before you get excited about backing the Pac-12. And honestly, the Pac-12 was really bad this year, and I'm not really high on what they'll be able to do this year. So they've been really bad. I will say the AAC is 7-14 ATS. I do think the AAC is a little bit better now, and I'd be hesitant to just blindly fade the AAC here in bowl season this year. The MAC is 7-10 ATS. If you go back longer term, the MAC has done really bad. The MAC is not a good conference in bowl season, and I got to tell you, I think ever since I've been covering this, been in the sports betting business, at least betting on my own for about 15 years now, selling plays professionally for 10 years. I think the MAC this year is the worst it's been any time in those 15 years. I really want to go against MAC teams pretty badly, but the matchups they drew, I'm not anxious to go against them based on the team they're playing against, so I have to be a little bit careful there. But the MAC has been really bad. I'll throw out a couple of the better ones here real quick. You got the ACC 21-12 ATS, which is interesting because the ACC is obviously very weak now, so I'd be cautious about that one too. The Big 12 is 13-8 ATS. And then a couple of the others I want to throw out. The SEC is 18-18, but they're 9-4 ATS as an underdog. So I think that's probably one you want to keep in mind if the SEC is an underdog. The Big 10 the same way, 14-13 ATS, but 9-3 ATS as an underdog. So maybe check out some of those stronger conferences when they're an underdog. Maybe some people are pretty low on them, but maybe they just played really high quality competition throughout the course of the season.
And it tells you to bet dogs. If you're going into a bowl game, if you're a favorite, you're probably going to be looser. You're going to, not maybe prep so hard. It's like you're going to have some fun. But you go in as a dog, you might be a little bit more focused there. So I can totally see that, especially when you're like an SEC or Big Ten team. You're like, why are we dogs? Why are we dogs against UCF? Why are we dogs against South Florida? Stuff like that. I think that really applies. So fantastic there. I wonder why the MAC has been so bad. My theory is that they could, and this is just, I wouldn't even say a theory. Maybe they're from the north and most of these games are in the south and they just go down there and have a blast, and if that's the case, good for them, because, it's not too warm in Indiana, Ohio, some of those MAC states, right? So right. That could be potentially one of them is just straight up, we get to leave our campus. It's being paid for. We're going on vacation. Let's treat it like vacation. When you're a team down south, it's probably more business. So, definitely see what you're saying there. The AAC, I love them this year. I think they're the strongest conference. I actually think they're, minus Clemson, they're stronger than the ACC in football, personally. I think power rating wise, most people would say that. So I'm not going to fade them by any means. But the spreads do adjust, and it's all based upon the spreads. It's like the MAC could be set 16-1 if the spread was right, so maybe the spreads over adjust and there'll be a flip flop of this year. The way I look at it is I think Conference USA, I think the bottom of Conference USA is worse than the most of the MAC teams there. So, I'm going to try to look at it from the top of the MAC. Maybe I'm not going to fade them, but maybe somebody a little bit towards the middle I will personally. So we'll see what happens. But we got a lot of great stuff to talk about here. Let's talk about trends for totals in any of these bowl games. Is there any? What should we look for in the stadiums or within the conference matchups themselves?
Well, let's give you a couple general trends here to start with. The over is 71-52 when both teams have a win percentage of 65% or less. So these are usually the earlier bowl games, a little bit less to play for. Let's be honest. You can't get quite as up for the Camellia Bowl as you could for the Rose Bowl. It'd be hard to do. So a little bit less to play for in a game like that. You have a little bit of fun. 71-52 here. That's 57.7% overs. And you know this well. I mean, 57.7% is nothing to sneeze at. It's very, very solid. So that's something I think that listeners should pay attention to. Some of these games where you got two teams that really maybe they didn't have a great season, especially in these games where the teams might be a little bit disappointed. Maybe they were supposed to do better than this, but hey, we get one last chance. We might as well air it out. And I think that some of these teams get a little bit more aggressive. They throw the ball deep. They don't keep stalling the way they have throughout the course of the season. They go ahead and play a little faster. I've seen that happen quite a few times. Some coaches just come into a bowl game with a different game plan. So you got to be careful about that, both on sides and totals, that that could happen, and try to read the press conferences, the beat writers, things like that. Occasionally you'll find something helpful there. And like I said, the over 71 and 52, 57.7% overs, and that's when both teams have a win percentage of 65% or less. The second one I was going to say that's very general, the under is 162 and 139, which is 53.8% with totals of 53 or higher in bowl games since 2005. Now, a lot of these have come to in games that are not played in a dome. So you have a lot of games that are played in a dome that have a lower total. I would say that I would tend to lean to the over in games like that because, there's no weather, really fast track, things like that. You get some of these games that have a high total and you've had rain, it's played on grass or something like that. You get a decent amount of unders. So I would be careful taking high overs unless you think that, the matchup really suggests that you do so. So I would say that in general, the two general trends I have there are the over has been really good when the win percentages are lower. The under has been pretty well when the number just gets too high. There's some specific ones that we can get into too, but those two are kind of the general ones that I have.
Oh, those are good. Absolutely. And definitely make sure if you're betting an under on one of those carpet tracks in the dome that you've done your homework on these teams, because it doesn't take much to go over those totals, especially if there's going to be some serious turnovers. So, fantastic answer there. Thank you.
Rose Bowl, 11-5 to the over in the last 16. Let's be honest, the Rose Bowl, there's almost always perfect weather. I mean, the field's in great shape. I think the over makes sense in the Rose Bowl. Citrus Bowl, 12-6 to the under the last 18. There can be questionable field conditions in that game. You get a lot of rain around there. Yankee Stadium is a place where I'd want to watch for weather quite a bit. That is not your typical bowl location. It's obviously not. It's being a baseball field, but in general, there's going to be plenty of chances for bad weather there. So that's one that I'd pay attention to. Also, Albertson Stadium, one where weather could play a role as well, and I would definitely be careful about that one. If you want to play an over, I think you want to wait until you get closer to the game to make sure that the weather's not bad. And Levi Stadium, you and I both know, it has a long reputation for being really good to under bettors, high grass, sometimes even some rain there. So that's a good one for the under. And then one other one I wanted to mention is Sun Bowl Stadium. This one's at elevation. That's important for sides and totals. Some of those teams are not used to playing in that, so that's something that you want to look at too.
Nice. And for you listeners, Albertson Stadium is Boise State, so that would be the Idaho Potato Bowl. So careful for that one. That blue turf can get to you. gets to me when I'm watching the game. I'm like, it's just so you start seeing blue everywhere. So when you turn away from the TV, it's very strange. But cool, man. That's great. It's great for specifics there. Yeah, Yankee Stadium. Some of those baseball stadiums definitely a different feel for people going to play those. So 100% agree. Yeah, the Rose Bowl. I've been to two of them. Love it. Great atmosphere. Everyone's fired up. Everyone seems to be running a little bit faster. I love that. That game is fantastic. And one of the games I went to actually I think was probably the under, was Wisconsin versus TCU. So that game was pretty that was one of the worst Rose Bowls I can remember seeing. But the other ones the next year when they played Oregon was fantastic. Well, let's get into a couple of these bowls here, shall we? And why don't we start out with the college football playoffs here? And you expect sometimes to have the sharpest lines when it comes to this important games, but everyone's going to be watching it. People are going to be wanting to bet it. Let's look at the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. We have Oklahoma versus LSU. LSU's around 13.5-ish. That thing's creeping towards 14. Over under 75.5. What are your thoughts on this one, Kyle?
I think this thing is going to be painted 14 here. If you can get a 13.5, I think you want to take that one right away. You got 73% of the bets here on LSU, 78% of the money so far on LSU. It's hard to find somebody who likes Oklahoma. That would caution me a little bit if I was wanting to lay the points here with LSU. Another thing that I'll just kind of work into this discussion is to say that, the public has done really badly in these bowl games. So more often than not, you want to be on the opposite side of the public. Teams receiving 40% or less of the bets are 158 and 107. That's 59.6% ATS. So you don't want to be on the public heavy sides too often. I know some people think that the whole public versus sharp thing is overdone, and it probably is in general. But in bowl season, this time of the year, I think it matters a lot, who the public is on, because a lot of these public bettors haven't followed college football the way you and I have throughout the course of the season. They just want to have some action on a game. So in this one, LSU, though, laying 14 points, the total 75.5, 76. I mean, obviously everybody would want to take the over, but 76 is such a high number. It's hard to take an over at that number. I tell you, I don't want to bet Oklahoma because I don't know that Lincoln Riley really trusts Jalen Hurts that much now. I mean, if anybody who watched that Baylor and Oklahoma game, Oklahoma was really close to losing that game. I mean, they almost blew it against the third string quarterback there for Baylor. And it seemed like Oklahoma was just really conservative on offense when they got a little bit of a lead. And maybe that was because, they were thinking that Baylor probably couldn't score. Maybe it was because Jalen Hurts has made some pretty bad mistakes in some of their big games. He's thrown some pretty bad interceptions. I know he put up really good numbers, and I'm certainly not saying Jalen Hurts is a bad player, but I give Joe Burrow the pretty big edge there over Jalen Hurts. And, LSU's defense is clearly better than Oklahoma's defense. And this one, I find it hard to find much value here. I'll be honest. I would have wanted to play LSU. There's no way I'm taking LSU minus 14, though. And I would have leaned to the over. I think if I still had to bet it, I'd probably play the over. But, it's how can you take over 76, especially in a game that's that important?
Well, I'll tell you how. It looks like someone just got suspended here for Oklahoma, and their best edge rusher, Ronnie Perkins, is going to be out. It looks like I heard some rumors about this and just checked into it. He's out. R. Stevenson's out, and Trajan Bridges. Bridges didn't do anything there, I know, but that's interesting here. And so their pass rush is going to be hurt even worse. That's somewhat impactful, right?
Right.
I was going to lean Oklahoma until I saw this. Now I have to reassess. Oklahoma, the reason I was going to lean them is because, Jalen Hurts, you haven't seen them as a dog yet. And you might see, and this guy came in with a chip on his shoulder from what happened at Alabama, right? I mean, he's coming into this, and Lincoln Riley is just the perfect coach that can turn anybody into a great player. Right now you're seeing a lot of quarterbacks come out, and Baker Mayfield's not exactly ripping it up in the NFL yet. And you wonder if that's just more credit to Lincoln Riley for what he did, and Jalen Hurts, he might just play out of his mind. He might just play above his skill level, thread every single pass. It's possible because he's coming in as a dog. And I just can't get it out of my head what Oklahoma did to Alabama last year when they came back. They really, really came back. Now, obviously, different quarterback here, but very interesting. Yeah, Joe Brady and Steve Enbinger, when they came in to help Ed Orgeron out, they were the perfect. They brought into the RPO plays for LSU, speed, offense. Just they pick up the pace when they need to. They've really been slowing it down a lot in the fourth quarter. So you wonder how much more LSU can be blowing out these teams. So to be honest with you, I was going to lean Oklahoma, and I was just going to wait to see if it would go past 14. But now I'm just not so sure anymore.
I think this one might go past 14. I really think there's a decent chance we'll see a 14.5, though I will say that I wonder if we get 14.5, there'd probably be some sharp buyback there. I can't imagine that thing just sits at 14.5 or 15 for too long.
Right, exactly. I think so as well. So it would probably get hit at 14.5, and it might just end up at 14 by game time. So we'll see what happens. But it looks like their edge rush there was a pretty big suspension. Let's look at the Fiesta Bowl, my man. In Arizona, the Buckeyes, you know a little bit about them, is playing Clemson. And Clemson is a 2.5-point favorite here Over under is 63. I got to tell you, I was shocked to see them come in as a favorite. It really blew my mind. As a matter of fact, it made me reassess everything. What's going on here? Why isn't Ohio State the favorite?
So I'm going to preface this by saying that, obviously I'm an Ohio State fan. I usually don't bet Ohio State games just because I don't want to have any conflict. I just want to root for Ohio State to win, and that's it. Honestly, there's one thing that has me pretty worried as an Ohio State fan is Justin Fields' health. I think that Fields has to be able to run better than he did in that game against Wisconsin. He was just kind of a passer in that game. He has to be able to run. Clemson is going to do their absolute best to stop J.K. Dobbins. Ohio State's going to want to run the football a lot here. And I think there is some question as to whether Clemson can stop them from running because Clemson's defensive line is clearly not what they were last year. Their stats look amazing, but, they didn't go against good rushing attacks. We know that Clemson hasn't played a good schedule in general. One thing that would give me a lot of pause if I was betting Ohio State here is how good Dabo Swinney's teams have done in these games. I mean, they have been ready every single time. He has done so well, and he has the experience in this where Ryan Day doesn't. I think both of these guys are really good coaches. So I don't know that you'd say in general there's a coaching edge one way or the other, but experience in this spot does mean something. So I give Clemson an edge in that. Ohio State's defense has been very good throughout the course of the season. They've had some issues here. They had some issues against Wisconsin. They had some issues against Michigan, giving up some big plays. I think Ohio State will give up quite a few yards in this game. I think Clemson's offense is so good, really good wide receivers. Ohio State has a good secondary, but Clemson, very, very balanced on offense. Trevor Lawrence started out not playing that well. I think Clemson will move the ball and score quite a few in this one. So the question is, do you think Ohio State can score quite a few here? I think if Fields is healthy, they can, and I would lean to the over in this game. Honestly, I usually don't like betting overs. My lean would be the over here, but the big caveat and why I'm not going to bet the over is I don't know if Justin Fields is completely healthy. 3 weeks isn't a really long time. His knee was definitely bothering him quite a bit in that last game. For everybody that watched Ohio State throughout the course of the season, he was not himself the last couple games. So we'll see if he is. The one thing I'll say, if you're going to bet on Ohio State, that is a huge advantage that I think almost nobody's talking about, special teams. Clemson's special teams have been really bad. You would think that would hurt them in a big game at some point. According to S&P, they're 103rd in the nation in special teams. Ohio State's 18th. So that's a big advantage, and you very rarely see really good teams that are that bad in special teams. Clemson's gotten away with it because they're that good at everything else. And I think that Clemson's defense, Brent Venables, really good defensive coordinator, and that's another caveat to leaning toward the over is that Venables always has a good game plan ready. I'm not going to bet this game. Obviously, you know who I'm going to be rooting for. As a Buckeyes fan, I am a little bit nervous about this game. I'm certainly hoping they didn't have to play Clemson in the first game.
Well, Clemson didn't have to kick field goals because they would always score touchdowns, right. And now they might have to kick field goals, and their field goal kicker is only 62%, 13 out of 21. So that is not good. I mean, that might be, you might have just gave it all away there. That might be the whole key to this thing because Ohio State's red zone defense might be enough to stop Clemson and force them into kicking some field goals. Great point. And, like I said, I had Ohio State as the best team all year than the way Clemson was. And I think people downgrade them, but look who they played their last 3 games. They played Michigan, hungry Michigan, Penn State, and Wisconsin. Of course their stats are going to go down a little bit, right? Clemson's got a 3.5 net yard per play. Ohio State fell down to 3, but it's not even close to the competition. Clemson had the easiest schedule of all Power 5 teams, in my opinion. I couldn't believe how easy they had it. Yeah, they run scores up and stuff like that, but if they get stopped and can be held without touchdown, this could be where Ohio State shines here. It's funny, you say I love second half overs when it comes to these situations, but I kind of like the first half under here. And it's because it's 31.5, and I bet that thing goes down to 31, and I took it 31.5. I see that's 4 touchdowns and a field goal, and you're still hitting the under. And the way these teams is going to start, they're not going to go wild. They're not going to whip the ball around. They're going to feel each other out. They're going to run a bit. Both the teams are going to run. They're not going to risk being behind by some stupid pick six or something like that. The way these coaches are, it's going to be more of a chess match in the first half, in my opinion. And I think that's the best play that I can come out of this game, because between the threes, there's absolutely no way to look at either side. I have a power rating exactly the same, so I have this as a pick 'em. But I'll tell you this: if it was at 3, I'll bet Ohio State, and if it's at 3 on the other side, I'd bet Clemson, because there's just too much value at that number, isn't there, Kyle?
I agree with that. I think that it's in that zone right now where it's an easy pass. I really think there's probably a pretty good chance it stays in this zone, right? I mean, who's going to really want to lay 3 points in this game? I don't think anybody's going to want to lay 3 points here. So I think there's a good chance it stays here. I will say the other thing about Ohio State that some people don't realize is they're very run-heavy offense. 64% of their plays on offense have been runs. And you might say, well, they've been beating teams so badly. Well, and in their games that were close games, they were even more run heavy than that. So, against Penn State, for example, you remember, I think they had like 61 runs and 27 or 28 passes. So Ohio State's definitely a run heavy offense. I think both of these teams will run it quite a bit here in this game. So I don't mind the first half under. And if it is low scoring there early on, then maybe you do see a second half over. I think this is more than anything. This is just a great game. I'm excited as a fan for this game.
Yeah, this is absolutely the best semifinal game that I can ever remember. This could easily just be the final game anyway, right? I mean, it could be, but I have LSU right with them. Too bad all 3 can't play each other at once. So that's just not football. But I love it. I'm taking the under 31.5 for 2 stars. Let's move on to the beginning here. We're going to start on December 21st, being that we covered some of the other games last week. The New Mexico Bowl, Central Michigan versus San Diego State. San Diego State is laying 3.5 points. Over under is so low, 41, Dream Style Stadium, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Kyle, what are your thoughts on this one?
This feels like we might have stepped down in talent a little bit, doesn't it? I mean,
like down to high school, man.
Right. Central Michigan team that, to be honest with you, I'm pretty frustrated that I didn't bet them more than I did this year. Central Michigan really was a much improved team. You have to give McElwain a ton of credit. They did a tremendous job with that team. You look at how bad they were last year, especially on offense. They couldn't move the ball on anybody. And then this year, they're 42nd in the nation in yards per play, 34th in yards per carry. Central Michigan was good on offense. Now, the thing that I think the most about this game is San Diego State games have been, I have to say, San Diego State, I'm a big fan of San Diego State because I've made a lot of money betting unders on them. This is a team that has been an under machine. I think 10 or 11-1. I guess 11-1 to the under so far this year. The problem is now the word's kind of out on this. I was hoping this total would be 42 or higher, and I would have bet the under. I still lean to the under. I can't take an over with San Diego State. I can't do it. Rocky Long, though, has not been very good in these bowl games, and neither has the MAC. So who do you really want to back in this game? I think I would lean to Central Michigan, but they're a long ways away from home, a very long ways away from home. San Diego State's very used to playing in a place like this. Rocky Long's from New Mexico, originally came from there to San Diego State. So much more familiar setting to them. San Diego State, if you were crafting a perfect team for an under, it'd be San Diego State. They can't throw the ball. Jawan Washington's been hurt. Their defense is very good. They play slowly. So I think they will keep that kind of style of play going. I can't imagine they're just going to come out and air it out all the time. That's not San Diego State. Central Michigan, I think to them there's a little bit more unknown. San Diego State, I think I know what they are. Central Michigan, they've played in such a weak MAC all year. They looked good against the MAC, but were those teams just that bad? I'm going to lean to Central Michigan plus the points here, but I have to tell you, I don't think I'm going to bet this game.
All right. No, fair enough. People in the MAC, it's hard to trust the MAC, but I personally think the wrong team is favored here. I think that, you look at Central Michigan last year, they won 1 game, and now they made a bowl game. They're fired up a little bit. They lost to Miami of Ohio. That was a tough game. That was close. But I think it probably benefited them playing that defense because now they're just playing another team that has good defense. They probably work out some kinks here. What I like is, the coach, McElwain, doesn't he just coached Colorado State a few years back, didn't he?
Yeah.
And so he's played these teams before. I think there's an advantage there to doing that, and, like you said, Rocky Long, is he good in bowl games? Doesn't look like it from what you're saying here. I'll tell you this. I like San Diego State over their 8 wins, and I hit that at plus money, but they were terrible. They're the most fraudulent 9-3 team out there, in my opinion. They're not even a positive in yards per play.
Right.
Central Michigan is a 0.85 net yards per play. Okay. And, they did play some tougher teams, Wisconsin and their non-conference and all that, and they're still positive. I like the fact that they're on the top of the MAC here, and I think they're going to score some points. I think they're motivated here. And you look at San Diego State, they got to avoid Boise State this year, Wyoming. They avoided Air Force. They blew it against Nevada and Hawaii. Otherwise, they should have won the West there. But at the same time, they're fraudulent, and if they get jumped, they're not catching up. This San Diego State team does not have what it takes to catch up. Central Michigan can get one-dimensional on defense, and then that's how they're going to beat them. So I think they're going to be able to score enough points to beat San Diego State. I like them on the money line, and I like them on the plus 3.5 here, my man. Any final thoughts?
Well, I agree with your lean, and you're making a compelling case, and I agree with you that San Diego State is very overvalued. They've been fortunate to win as many games as they did, certainly. I think you're trying to talk me into betting Central Michigan here.
I'm trying to, Kyle. Put some beer money on it so you can at least
right.
Don't have to feel too bad now. But I don't know. I looked at it and I didn't bet it the first time. It took me a couple times to look at it, and sometimes that's what it takes for these bowl games. You get that first look, then it's a second look, then a third look. It's always great to come back to things. That's what I like doing here. And so it took me a few times, but I like Central Michigan side for sure. Well, let's move on to the Cure Bowl. Liberty versus Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern is laying minus 4.5 points. Over under is 58, man. Not too excited to watch this game, Kyle. You might need a cure from depression after watching these two teams play football. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this is certainly not the most exciting game. And Georgia Southern, we know what they are. They're a triple option attack that plays really slowly. If you look at tempo so far this year, they're 129th in the country. I think either Wisconsin or Utah is 130th as far as the slowest pace. So they're right there as far as taking a lot of time between plays, and they're going to continue to do that. Liberty plays fast. They're 35th in tempo. Liberty, their offense looks really good. If you look at the scheduling and see who they played, though, they're 6.52 yards per play, which is 17th best in the country. But look at the schedule of teams they've played. And you look down through there and you think, man, they have just absolutely been able to run up scores on some terrible defenses. They played New Mexico State twice. They're awful on defense. UMass, we could talk about UMass for a while about how terrible their defense is, obviously. Rutgers, not a good team, obviously. Hampton, these are teams that they've beaten up on, and they put some huge numbers up on. This Liberty offense is not near as good as they look, if you just look at yards per play. Georgia Southern certainly played a much tougher schedule than did Liberty, no doubt about that. I like Georgia Southern triple option offense. I don't think Liberty will be able to slow that down very well. I do think that, this total is kind of high when you think about, one team is running the ball every single time and playing that slowly. If you see, 58, 58.5, 59, there's a lot of different numbers out there, but you get close to 60 with the triple option team. I'm very hesitant to back it over. So I would lean to an under. I also kind of like Georgia Southern here. The public slightly toward Liberty in this game. I don't know how that one's going to end up going as far as the split. Right now, it's just 54% of the bets on Liberty. So this wouldn't match any kind of, just fading the public at this point. But I do think that Georgia Southern -4 is a decent price here. I'm going to lean toward Georgia Southern here. This is a game that I haven't bet, but I will consider it more here as we go through the week. Like I said, I think the strength of schedule advantage that they have here is significant enough to really matter quite a bit. And I also think that Liberty's numbers are pretty skewed based on the defenses they played.
There you go. They really are. I agree with that. And maybe like you have it on the background and you finish wrapping your Christmas presents or something. Maybe that's
right.
the best way to do this. Liberty has had an easier schedule, in my opinion. And that's probably why they're a positive 0.6 net yards per play. Georgia Southern's actually a net negative one, but Liberty's shown some flashes when they beat Buffalo, and I don't know how that happened. And then they kept it within 7 points to BYU. And I was on BYU that game, so I'm a little bitter about that. But yet they're probably the worst bowl team out there right now. And Georgia Southern, they run the option like you said, but they do have a huge win against Appalachian State. They kept it close against Minnesota this year. Power ratings wise, I have the Golden Eagles by 3. I have Georgia Southern by 3, so it's not quite up to 4.5 when I'm looking at that. But Liberty seems to be decent at throwing the ball, 3,400 yards, a little bit more than that this year. The question is, will they capitalize on their possessions? Because there might be limited possessions against this option team. I have a slight lean to Liberty at 4.5, but no play for me, my man. We don't need to talk anymore about this one. Let's get into the Boca Raton Bowl. We have SMU facing Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic plus 3.5. Over under is 70.5. This is played at FAU Stadium here, Boca Raton, Florida. Whoa, home game here, Kyle. What we got going on?
I like SMU in this one. This is one where the only thing that scares me a little bit about this game is the fact that SMU is getting just about all the bets. 79% of their bets on SMU. As I look at this game, though, I think about home field advantage. I mean, is this really an advantage to be playing this game at home? I mean, you just lost your coach, and now you play a game at home when, a lot of times people kind of look forward to going to some of these other bowl games. You get to go to the Bahamas, or you get to go to, California or Hawaii or something like that. They're staying at home. I don't know that even is good. Florida Atlantic doesn't have a huge fan base to start with. I don't think that there should be much home field advantage for Florida Atlantic here. So, if you're giving Florida Atlantic 3 or 3.5 points for home field advantage, I think that's a mistake here. I think that SMU is in that much improved conference. This is a conference where SMU had some pretty big games this year. I've been pretty impressed with what the AAC did there this year. SMU, a much more complete team than is Florida Atlantic. If you look at Florida Atlantic, they did score a decent amount in conference, but non-conference games, their offense struggled quite a bit. I don't know that they can keep up with SMU in this one. I like SMU minus the points, and of the ones that we've talked about here so far today, SMU is my favorite.
Oh, there you go, man. I do have SMU higher in my power ratings by quite a few points here. The thing that scares me the most is that you're looking at a team playing at home, and you think of it as you want. Yeah, Lane Kiffin's gone, but they're a home dog. They're be like, oh my God, we're playing at home in our bowl game. We're a dog here. People say SMU, this is ripe for the taking here. Another thing that makes me wonder, cap and motivation. It's you always got to think of the other side. SMU is having a great year. I mean, they're having like one of those years that they probably thinking New Year's Bowl for a while until they got beat by Memphis and Navy.
True.
Maybe they wanted something bigger than this. I don't know. It's a great question, but I do know that Florida Atlantic just happened to play their last bowl game at the Boca Raton Bowl at home, and it was against Akron, right? That was I think it was in 2017, and they blew out Akron that game. It was Akron scored 3 points. Now, I hope that Akron was better than they are this year.
I was going to say, that's Akron, though.
It is Akron. Yeah, I know. And they're probably one of the reasons for the ATS margins here on poor old MAC conference. They're one of the culprits there helping that out, helping those ugly MAC stats out. But at the same time, I don't know. It made me not look at the side. But what I do like is the over here, Kyle. 70.5. I think that's a discounted over, and obviously weather dependent. I'm seeing light rain, but you're looking at SMU. as far as actual plays per game, not necessarily the pure tempo of seconds, but they're third at 81 plays per game out of the 130 teams, and FAU is 16th. So both of these guys play fast. SMU averages 43 points per game against probably some pretty decent defenses in the AAC, and you have FAU averaging 35 points a game themselves. So, I see a possible shootout here. And will the kids play hard for Willie Taggart coming in next year? I don't know. They got the interim coach there. So Glenn Spencer is going to be their coach. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think that one of these teams is going to get into the 40s, possibly even higher. And I like the over on this one. Kyle, any final thoughts?
I would like the over some. I do wonder about the weather. I think I'd wait on this one because some wind, some rain chances here. That would definitely affect it, especially with that high of a total. So I would wait and see what the weather's going to be here before I make a bet.
All right, we'll take a look at the weather there. Let's move on to the next game. What do we have on the docket? It looks like the Camellia Bowl. We have Florida International versus Arkansas State. Arkansas State laying 2.5 points. Over under is 62.5. And this is in Montgomery, Alabama, right? Or is that the Crampton Bowl? No, that's the name of the stadium, Crampton Bowl. Duh. It's, Camellia Bowl. I'll go first on this one here. I had some very high hopes for FIU, Kyle, coming into this season. I did bet them on their over-season win total and to take Conference USA, and I lost those bets. I thought their defense would improve enough to be champions there, and under Butch Davis, not so much here. Arkansas State isn't exactly the high-powered offense that we remember either. They're not as good as they used to be. Both teams are pretty even in yards per play, and that's about 0 in net yards per play. But the intriguing thing about this matchup is FIU is good against the pass, and that's Arkansas State's strength. FIU is bad against the run, and Arkansas State only averages 3.6 yards per carry, so they're bad at running the ball. It's interesting because, from a matchup perspective, I don't got a good read. Being that FIU can somewhat run the ball at 4.45 yards per carry, and Arkansas State can't stop the run that well at 5.11, I think that's where FIU should have the edge. I think they should run the ball, and I don't think they're going to win the game if they don't. So I'm going to see if a 3 pops here, Kyle. Right now I have a lean to FIU, but I'll take them for a star for 1 unit probably at +3. What are your thoughts?
I'll keep my thoughts brief here because I don't have much on this game. I'm almost positive I won't bet this game. I did want to say that the weather is a question mark here too. So the current forecast for this one looks like rain's a pretty good chance, about 70% rain and about 12 miles per hour wind. If that actually comes to fruition, you wonder if this total might be a bit too high. So that would be my suggestion in this game, is to check on the weather as it gets a little bit closer here. FIU has been really disappointing, like you said. I think FIU has more talent than Arkansas State, but I don't know what FIU's motivation level is, so I can't bet a side here.
All right, man. Yeah, that's motivation is huge here because they definitely came into the season with bigger things in mind, didn't they? All right, let's move on to the next bowl. We're going to look at the Bad Boy Mowers Gasparilla Bowl. We have Central Florida versus Marshall. Marshall, a huge dog, 17.5 points here. Over-under is at 61.5 at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, Florida. You got to wonder if the weather's going to affect that one. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, that was going to be one of the things I said, is that this is one of those spots where weather could be a factor, and you wonder if the field would be in good shape or not. So I'd be cautious to bet an over early here. I'd want to wait and see. We're a good ways out from this game, but there does appear to be some wind in the area at that time. So I would want to check that. As far as the side, this is a lot of points. I mean, I can't lay 17.5 points here. I'll give a slight lean here to Marshall in this one. I am worried if Marshall's offense can keep up with UCF. I think that UCF probably would have hoped to have a little bit better bowl game than this. So I would wonder about their motivation level here as far as laying 17.5. And if I'm not sure a team's motivation level and they're laying a bunch of points, I'm definitely not taking them. So, so far 60% of the bets are on Marshall here and 72% of the money. So, suggests probably a little bit of sharp money here on Marshall in this one. This is a very low ticket count so far. So, as we get closer to this game, you'll know more about it. But I think in this one, I'm going to lean toward Marshall. If there is some weather in the area, I would lean to the under here. I would say I'd probably lean to the under a little bit, even without it. And if there's some wind or rain in the area, then I would like the under here. As far as the side, slightly into Marshall.
Well, Kyle, I'm looking at the weather now, and it says moderate rain showers maybe here and 12-mile-per-hour wind, so it doesn't look like it's going to be that. I mean, it's early. Let's check in a couple of days, but you're right. I mean, this would favor the under here, and it certainly would favor Marshall. UCF, such a fast pace, throw the ball first type team. Marshall's a strange team to me, really. This is such a high spread here. They went to Boise State, only lost by 7, and then they go to Charlotte and lose to them a month ago. I mean, my power ratings have this game UCF minus 13.25, right? But is this a home field for them? They're 100 miles away, Are they going to have a lot more people than Marshall? Maybe. I would think a little bit more. I think you got to give them a point or something at least for home field, but not. Yeah. It doesn't get me above the 17 though, right. And the highest you can go if you gave them the full 3 is 16 from my power ratings. I think Marshall's happy to make a bowl game here, and they're a bit out of their league, but they also know that they're huge dogs. I think that's a motivational aspect right there. They need to limit possessions, and I think they can. They got to just pound the ball and just don't give UCF as many possessions. Even if you're down a few scores, I think you just got to run until at least the fourth quarter. So UCF has a pretty good defense on paper, but I don't know. This is probably, without weather, this is one I'm not going to be on. I have absolutely no lean right now. But that's a lot of points for a Doc Holliday team, man, isn't it?
It's a lot of points, and if there is weather there, obviously, like you mentioned, it affects both the total and the side, especially when you get 17.5 points. Marshall will want to play slow here. They're 89th in tempo over the course of the season. UCF's first, which I don't think would surprise anybody too much. Both of these teams have been pretty good at limiting big plays, so I'll lean to the under here and wait and see what the weather looks like.
All right, my man. Well, this is our last bowl game on December 24th that we're covering today, the SoFi Hawaii Bowl. No surprises who's in this one. We have Hawaii versus BYU. BYU laying only 2 points here. Over under is 64, Kyle. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I want to bet BYU in this game, and I want to like BYU. I will say it really concerns me when a team goes to Hawaii for a bowl game. Are they going to be excited for the game or just for the trip? We've seen this happen many times before. We've seen some teams that were very good teams come to Hawaii and play a terrible bowl game. I like BYU as a team. I think that they've been undervalued here. Really, they have a lot of depth at quarterback. BYU very good there. A decent defense. Hawaii doesn't have a good defense at all. And probably my strongest lean in this game would be the over. I know this one's got bet up a little bit already. 72% of the bets are on the over so far, 97% of the money. So just about everybody is taking the over, but that certainly has to be some sharp money because, as you know, we're a week before this game or almost a week before this game. The public wouldn't have been betting this game yet. So I think that, some sharps like the over here. I think that makes sense. My number is just slightly higher than this for the total. I have BYU minus 2.5 here, and I wanted to bet BYU, but like I said, it's just one of those spots where you don't know if they're going to be focused on the game or if they're just excited for a trip to Hawaii. This is a game on a side perspective that I think is very difficult to bet. So I'm curious to see what are your thoughts here on this side?
All right. Well, this one is a play for me, and it is on BYU. It's a home game for Hawaii, but I don't know if that really matters. A lot of people argue how much home field advantage they should have throughout the whole season. Tough question, but is BYU that much different than Boise State this year if you kind of look at the teams? I don't think so. I think they're pretty similar in the amount of athletes, the type of athletes they get there. I think they're better than the most of the group of five, and a little bit worse than Power Five. I think they're kind of in the middle. BYU beat Boise State this year. BYU had a tough season. They played Washington. They beat USC at home. They played Utah. They played Tennessee and beat them. BYU had a hard schedule. And so I forgive them for being a little bit less in yards per play than Boise State, whom they beat. So their loss was really ugly last week a couple weeks ago against San Diego State, but I don't think they're that motivated for this. They were in a bowl game here, and I think that BYU's the play because Hawaii can't stop the run. They can't, and BYU is going to look exactly how Hawaii has played Boise State, very lethargic, and they have a couple guys inside, but they just don't have the linebacker power. They don't have what it takes, and BYU also plays exceptionally well against the pass. They only allow 200 passing yards per game, ranking 36th in the nation. 36 ain't that bad compared to 130 teams out there when roughly 60 of them are Power 5, right? So I think that's pretty good. And now that I'm looking at the weather here, I know it's 6 days away. It says likely moderate rain showers and 20 mile per hour winds. It's too early to make a decision on that, but that almost makes it more of a free roll taking BYU here. Yeah. My power ratings have this at 6.25, Kyle, and that's giving Hawaii 2 points on the home field. Maybe I'm just down on Hawaii, but I like BYU walking away with this one. Not too worried about them having too much fun. They're pretty religious down there in Utah, my man. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I gave Hawaii 3 points here for home field advantage just because I've seen how many times other teams have come in here and look really bad. I do like BYU here in this game if I have to take a side. I am concerned that I could see this game going a couple different ways. I could see BYU winning by quite a bit, and it wouldn't surprise me at all because they're just the better team, and they clearly are the better team. I also could see BYU looking not nearly as good as most people would expect because of the of where they're playing. But I will say I agree with you. If the weather is an issue, that certainly helps BYU. There's no question about that because Hawaii is not a good running team. And one other thing I wanted to mention that I should have mentioned earlier, Hawaii is minus 14 in turnover margin. And I know that sometimes these things even out, but Colt McDonald for Hawaii makes some really bad decisions with the football. It has happened week after week. And Cordero has played part of the time and McDonald has played part of the time. But Hawaii has a turnover problem. And I do think that if that continues, it's going to be hard for them to win this game. I think BYU is just a better team than what they've been used to playing most of the course of the season. BYU played some tougher opponents than they did. So I will lean to BYU tend to agree with your side. I still think that there are some question marks about this one, but BYU is certainly the better team here.
Yeah, and I like that. I like this team a lot for 3 stars. So this is one of my better plays here. Let's move into a little basketball, Kyle. We only have a couple minutes left. So there's 2 huge games this weekend. We have Kansas versus Villanova and Kentucky versus Ohio State. I'll go first. We'll start with Kansas versus Nova. And I'm going by Ken Pom, really, to predict these spreads, Kyle. I think it's fair to do that. I'm pretty sure most of the books do that. Yeah. But Nova -1, over-under is 147. And if that's the case, I'm going to probably play Kansas here. Nova shoots a ton of threes, but they can't seem to defend it really well if you look at some of their numbers on Ken Pom, ranking pretty low against the three. But they haven't beaten a top 50 team yet. They kind of started a little bit lethargic last year as well here. And, I know the crowd's going to be fired up and everything, but with Azubuike back at Kansas, they have some studs there with Dotson and McCormick. I think they're going to use this as a signature win. I think they're going to go in there and handle Villanova. They rank 10th in offensive efficiency and 6th in defensive efficiency, and they can run. I'm thinking anything under 3, man. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I like Kansas some here too. I think that Kansas might be favored in this game, but I think I would be fine with laying a very small number here with Kansas. This Kansas team has more balance than does Villanova. Kansas has more good players than Nova does. Kansas has a much better defense than Villanova does, and I think that could be the difference here. I like Villanova as a team in general, and Jay Wright is a tremendous coach, so I don't like going against him very much. But Villanova, like you said, when they play up in competition this year, they haven't played well. They lost by 25 to Ohio State and by 9 on a neutral to Baylor. Kansas probably has more talent than both of those teams. Mm-hmm. So now you get a Kansas team come in here. I think this could be a signature win for Kansas, too. I'm going to lean toward Kansas in this one also.
Awesome. 100% agreement on that one. Can't wait for that game. If you get a little sick watching a few bowls on Saturday, flip it to that game, guys. You're gonna enjoy yourself watching that one. Well, the next one, we have Ohio State facing Kentucky. Number 1 on KenPom still. Ohio State had a little hiccup a week ago against Minnesota, but Kentucky had their hiccup as well, losing to Evansville, which I watched that game in shock a couple weeks back there. So KenPom has the spread Ohio State by 4. It's on a neutral location here in Las Vegas, T-Mobile Arena. So we have that interesting, and I think the spread's not going to be. I think it's going to be 3 personally. I think it's going to be Ohio State minus 3, over under 132 at T-Mobile Arena. What are your thoughts on this one?
So I'm talking about Ohio State football and basketball here today. This is I
wouldn't have it any other way, Kyle. You know that. Right. You're going to have to talk. I'm sorry, it's your team. I'm going to make you talk about them.
Right. Fortunately, I followed Ohio State basketball here really closely so far this year. I think Ohio State is not quite as good as what some people thought they were a couple weeks ago. North Carolina is not as good as most people thought. So that win at North Carolina isn't quite what some people thought it was. Ohio State's a good team. And Chris Holtman's a really good coach. I like him quite a bit. Ohio State is clearly better at defense than they are at offense. I think some of their offensive numbers are probably a bit skewed so far this year. If you look at KenPom, they've played the 242nd toughest schedule of defenses so far this year. So their offense has put up some pretty good numbers against some bad defenses. Kentucky's a really good defense. I think Kentucky's defense will give them some trouble. Kentucky's 7th in defensive efficiency in the country. I like the under, if anything, here. I won't play the side. I think this could be a fairly low-scoring, tight game. Obviously, you have to worry about there's a potential for overtime. But, this is a game where I think Kentucky is clearly better on defense than they are on offense. They're 11th in effective field goal percentage defense and 100th in effective field goal percentage offense. And as I said, I think Ohio State's clearly better on defense than they are on offense. So I think that both defenses will look good in this one, and I kind of like the under here.
All right, my man. I actually lean the same with you, and it might be a play. Ohio State can shoot the 3, but Kentucky seems to play pretty well inside. It's you look at these teams; they're both got some talent there. I think Ohio State's probably a little bit more seasoned with the players been around a lot longer. Kentucky's always big recruits coming in. Both teams, like you said, focus on defense. Both top 7 in defensive efficiency on KenPom. Both teams play at a slower pace. Both teams are playing in an arena that they're not used to. It's like 2 away games here. I don't know the stats and the backdrops on T-Mobile or anything. It can't be that good. I lean under here, and anything under, I would say I would take it 129 and down to 129. I would say I would probably take that under. Kyle, any final thoughts?
I hope it's not 129. I hope it's a little higher than that. But yeah, I like the under here. I think the number will probably be 131.5 or something like that. And I would say here that these two offenses still have something to prove. I don't think the defenses do. So I like the under. I think this should be a really close game.
Absolutely, sounds good. Well, real quick, any other games you want to throw out there for our listeners?
Well, I'll tell you what, if we look at games here in college hoops over the weekend, I did want to bring up one under the radar game here briefly. You know me, I like these under the radar games. So
sure.
Western Kentucky and Rhode Island. This is not, way under the radar. We're not talking about Southern Utah or something like that. But Western Kentucky, key injury to Bassie. I wanted to let your listeners know that Western Kentucky is a team that had a really high upside with him in the middle. They're not even close to what they would be without him. They haven't played a single game without him yet. They've been off for 2 weeks. The 7th, he got injured at Arkansas, or a home win over Arkansas. Now they play Rhode Island, a team who's been pretty good this year. I would look to play Rhode Island here, especially if the line is similar to what KenPom has. So if we see a -5 or something like that, I like Rhode Island here.
Like it, man. Great find. It looks like 77-72 is what Ken Pom predicts it at. So fantastic. I would guess to the under too. Unless this guy's really good at defense. I haven't followed too much Western Kentucky, Kyle. Any lean to the total?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably under if I had to take something. I'd say he was good at both offense and defense. So it's probably pretty neutral to that. I probably won't bet the total. I would like Rhode Island better here.
Fantastic, Kyle. Well, how could our listeners benefit from your bowl plays and your college basketball?
Well, a couple ways. So huntersportspicks.com, you can go over there and get my bowl package. I also have the Free Picks newsletter still up over there. I think it's 90 and 58 run here on the Free Picks in that newsletter. So we'll continue doing those just like we have been. And like I said, I've got bettersportspicks.com, a new venture where you can pick out, totals only packages, ATS only packages, individual packages, whatever. Myself and Steven Nover, another handicapper who's been very solid over the years, veteran of the industry who's proven to be a winner in this industry for a long time. So you can look for my plays or his plays there. A lot of free information, like I said, lots of bowl information coming up, contests for cash prizes. Go to the members area over there, register for free. If you want to purchase anything, Oddsbreakers 20 to get 20% off anything. So that's a unique coupon code here for Oddsbreakers listeners. If you want to buy anything, just go over to bettersportsfix.com and enter that coupon code.
All right, fantastic, Kyle. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about these first bowl games. People are going to be watching. People are going to be taking your advice, and really appreciate you coming. Have a fantastic rest of your week, Kyle.
Thank you. You the same. I always enjoy doing this show.
Now it is time for some NFL Week 16 free plays. We're going to start right out with New Orleans versus Tennessee. Tennessee getting plus 2.5 at home over under 51. Now, both teams here should be motivated. Tennessee desperate to make the playoffs, and the Saints looking for a first-round bye. I like what Tennessee's been doing lately. They had a close loss last week against a tough Houston Texans team, but this test might be a little bit too big for them to make the playoffs. They were able to beat up on some bad defenses, but when they stepped up in class, it kind of came crashing down. Plus, now people are taking them seriously, and they're not overlooking them. Even though Ryan Tannehill is
so hot right now,
they still struggle on defense, and the Saints defense has been swarming. So very much swarming. And on the road, they only allow 20 points per game. Their strength is against the run, allowing 4.4 per attempt. That's not that great for Henry. So, I think the Saints just got more help too. They signed Janoris Jenkins from the Giants. They're going to get some help in the secondary there. So Tennessee, they have a decent defense. They haven't allowed more than 24 points at home since early November playing Kansas City. I got to give the Saints -1 in this game. That's my number, and then they're -2.5. So I don't have a huge opinion on the side. I really don't. And but I do look at this number. I kind of like the under. Okay, I kind of like the under here because I see both teams trying to play keep away from each other. I see the Saints stopping the run. I see the Tennessee Titans playing tough at home. I like under 51. It's a 3-star premium play. Head and book it.
You better lock it up. You better lock it up. No, you lock it up. You lock it up. Lock it up. Lock it up.
Next game, we have Oakland versus the LA Chargers. Chargers laying about -6.5. Over under is 45. Throw away your power ratings on this one, guys. Throw away your power ratings. You know why?
What a stupid question that is. What a stupid question. But I watch you a lot. You ask a lot of stupid questions.
This could be Rivers' last home game playing for the Chargers, the team he's played for his whole life. I actually think it is. It just really feels that way. The way the Chargers have been talking, the way the media in LA has been talking. Okay, I'm not sure he's coming back. He hasn't been able to get this team over the hump, and they're probably ready to go in another direction here. You know, Eli was in this position at MetLife Stadium last week, and he played out of his mind. Okay, so this is a situational play. It really is. You know, I don't care necessarily what this spread is under 9-10 points. I like the Chargers here, you know. And another thing for this side, the Raiders, they're done. Their season's over. I know how much Gruden loves his draft picks. He loves hoarding them. He loves being a top drafter, top 10. He wants to probably get into. You know, this is Gruden here, and I can see him playing a lot of second string and third string just to see what he has for next year. You know, this is also a revenge spot for LA. We were on the Oakland Raiders when this game was in Oakland, when the Raiders had a chance here. And to be honest with you, the Chargers were completely in this game the whole time, and they are much more injured now. They're much more healthy. Okay, I think you're just going to see a partial Raiders team here and a very, very motivated Chargers team. So I think Phil, this is his chance to win the big one for his mega giant family of kids and all the Charger fans out there for his last game at home. I'm taking the Chargers -6.5, 3-star premium shared play.
You suck!
Next game we have Cincinnati versus Miami. It's about a pick 'em. Over under is 47. Please don't watch this game. Okay? Please don't watch this game. And if you do, if you have to watch this game, maybe at least make it a drinking game or something out of it. Like maybe every time there's a turnover, you have to slam your beer or something. Or for every 3 and out, maybe you have to take a shot. Well, actually, don't do that. You might die if you did that. So this game is the battle of the worst teams, and there's actually a betting position in this game. You know, I don't know why the Bengals should be winning this game. Okay, I have no clue why they should even try. I've never seen a player 2 games before the season ends that's actually healthy, missed most of the year, just decides to sit out the rest of the year. Well, that's AJ Green. Okay. AJ Green deciding not even to play the last 2 games at all for no reason whatsoever should just tell you the trajectory of the Bengals. The Bengals have been a shell of themselves for most of the year, and I do not see a lot of motivation here to win in Miami. And the fact is, they could screw up here and win in Miami, and then they can go ahead and win against Cleveland at home and completely blow the first pick of the draft. So why the hell would you do that? It makes way more sense for this team to lose in Miami and then win one and still get the worst pick in the draft against Cleveland at home. You know, that final home game, kind of a rally for next year. So that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping to fade them this week and be on them next week against Cleveland. But the truth is both teams are equally terrible. -1.2 net yards per play. Miami scores a little bit more than Cincy, but the Bengals have a little bit better of a defense. Cincy has no reason to threaten their number 1 pick here by winning this game. Next week's the game to win. And I think that the rival Cleveland is probably somewhat of a look-ahead spot. I think this is the last chance for Miami to win another game because they're going to New England next week. This is their last home game. I have Miami -1 here. To be honest with you, I have them even on my power rating, so you would think with home field they should be about a 2.5 point favorite here in Miami. So Miami -1. It's a 3-star premium shared played for all the reasons that I just stated for you right there. All right, my friends, now it is time for
the sharp side of the Force.
The Sharp Side of the Force is brought to you by uwager.lv for a 50% sign-up bonus. Please visit uwager and use the promo code OddsBreakers. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's get into some Sharp college line movement here, and we're going to go all the way up till Christmas. First, we have Kent State from +8 down to +6.5. A 21% difference between the ticket count and the money. You know, Utah State's got some players that may be suspended or not playing in this bowl game, from what I hear. Next, we have App State versus UAB. UAB was hit at 17.5, and it's been at 16.5 for a long time. 40% of the money, or 40% difference. 24% of the tickets are on UAB, but 64% of the money. Next one. That's actually all we have for Sharp action until Christmas. Marshall, there's a little bit of Sharp action on at +17.5, just to let you know. Sharp totals. All right, for the totals, we have some Sharp on the over. Central Michigan versus San Diego State, over 41, a 41% difference there. It's a low total at 41. We have some Sharp action on the Liberty versus Georgia Southern, under 58.5, a 28% difference between tickets and money. And Sharp money on the Boise State, Washington State, under 49.5, a 37% difference between ticket count and money. And then App State versus UAB, under 48. We have a 72% difference between ticket count and money. 24% of the bets are on the under, but 96% of the money. Huge difference there so far. But, you know, this game doesn't have nearly all the bets that it's going to have come Saturday. Central Florida versus Marshall. We have Sharp money on the under. Only 3% of the tickets are on the under, 61.5, but 39% of the money is on the under. So there you go there. Dual action on the Hawaii versus BYU, over 64. 72% of the tickets are on the over, but 97% of the money. So there you have it. That's your Sharp action all the way up till Christmas for these college bowl games. Let's take a look at the NFL. And there's some Sharp money on the Redskins, -2.5, a 31% difference between ticket total and money. Sharp money on the Jets at +3, a 22% difference between ticket count and money. Sharp money on the Falcons at -7, hosting the Jaguars. 61% of the tickets on the Falcons, but 81% of the money, a 20% difference here. Sharp money on the Raiders, +7 at the Chargers. That's flip-flopped a little bit. 24% difference there. And Sharp money on the it's on the Vikings. 34% of the tickets are on the Vikings, but 61% of the money, a 27% difference. That thing went from -4 to -5.5. Probably still a little value there if you like the Vikings under the number of 6. Sharp totals in the NFL. We have not a ton. The under, pretty big on Lions versus Broncos, under 38. A 43% difference between ticket count and money. Sharp money on the over, Cardinals versus Seahawks, from 48.5 to 51. A 47% difference between ticket total and money. And that's about it. The Bears versus Chiefs is kind of on the under 44. It's a 24% difference. And I'm kind of curious about the Tennessee one, since we're playing that under. Yeah, it's 21% difference. So we hit under 51. It's at 50.5, a 21% difference between ticket count and money. So there is your Sharp action. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you enjoy the Odds Breakers, Please feel free to rate, review, and subscribe. Feel free to share our episodes on social media. We'd really appreciate that. Feel free to tag us if you do. Have a fantastic weekend. I hope you guys, like as usual, win all your bets and go get some wins.